because if you can master sales skills over the phone, which is all speech, it's all speech. And so that's why if people are trying to improve in their business and they are, even like you said, you work with employees of big companies. If you are an individual that is in a business, in sales, I would highly suggest reaching out to Rebecca to help you in your speech, because that's going to help you serve more people, which is ultimately going to help serve your business as well. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sean San Jose podcast. I'm Sean San Jose. I'm a realtor internationally right now. We have agents in many different countries. I'm based out of California, Ventura County, California. So if you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest anywhere in the nation, reach out to me. Would love to help you. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm super excited to introduce you to Rebecca Linquist, who is a speech, voice, accent, and presence coach with over 25 years of experience in the Silicon Valley of Northern California. She's helped numerous non-native American English speaking professionals gain confidence, clarity in their ability to communicate effectively and change how they show up by focusing on their breath, articulation, speech, and especially accent, which is her forte. Her business, English by the Hour, offers Zoom coaching to clients worldwide who are serious about creating lasting change in their speech and accelerating their progress in achieving their goals. From what can take years to just a few months. Her website is www.englishbythehour.com. And she also has a YouTube following and a Spotify podcast that she launched this month. In a period of 4 30-minute calling sessions, she has helped me land a sale that will result to a $45,000 commission. She has also improved my speech when negotiating to have a more authoritative tone, which allowed me to get my clients exactly the deal they were looking for on a recent real estate negotiation. So I'm super grateful to have you here. Rebecca, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And, I didn't know that until I'm hearing it from you now, that it resulted in that for you. So I'm glad that just doing a show like Clubhouse did something like that for you. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Little tweaks in my tonality and empathy really was what helped me land this deal recently. It was a situation with a guy who was facing foreclosure, and I was able to connect with him by cold calling and was able to ultimately help him in the situation that he was dealing with. So just through the empathy, I was able to connect over the phone, and he basically opened him up to allow me to get to the table with him. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. And I just want to start out the podcast with, because can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Sure. I didn't initially start out as a coach. I had a hard time finding my niche in the beginning, in my 20s. I'm almost 60 now. So 40 years ago, I moved to Silicon Valley and tried a variety of things. In fact, I even worked with the multiple listing service in real estate at one point. I trained realtors to use computers before most people knew how to use computers like they do today. And I stuck with that for quite a few years. I was a trainer, and I was also a senior manager at that company. And I did a variety of jobs. And then I went back to school and got a master's in linguistics.
Wow.
And what was interesting about that is they told us no one needs to change their accent. That accent is identity and you shouldn't touch it. Don't touch it. And it was interesting because people started coming to me asking me to work on it. They wanted to work on it for their own reasons. So I realized there was a disconnect between what education might tell us should be true and what's true in the real world. And so I went there and became an accent coach.
That's awesome. And man, I don't know, your knowledge is extensive in regards to so many different things. I know you mentioned earlier to me on the Clubhouse, you spoke about displaying questions and engagement questions. Can you go into just a brief thing on what you coached me on this morning?
Sure. So display questions are something you have to be very careful about. What the term means is you're asking people to display their knowledge. So this is something that teachers use. And most of us, when we're kids, we have teachers who ask us display questions. What is 2 + 2? It's 4. Good job, Johnny. So the idea is we ask you things we want you to know. Maybe it's something I already taught you. Maybe it's something obvious. Maybe it's something we're all dealing with in our society. And this morning, inflation is what we were talking about, and whether or not you bring that up in a conversation, and how do you bring that up? So if you ask someone on the phone, what happens when you go to the gas station, and you're wanting them to say prices are higher, it's kind of obvious. So it might sound like you're talking down to them if you ask a display question. So that's that type of a question.
Nice. Yeah. And so in sales, I've found that it's always asking questions in order to get the client to self-realize basically where you're guiding them down the conversation. So I can totally understand how if you're speaking to them like a child, that's not going to come through. Yet a lot of times when I'm on the phones, it's a lot different than sometimes when we're role playing. So you're testing certain things and you're throwing certain questions out there to get feedback. And I'm glad you spread light on that, because that's going to help me moving forward on asking the right questions and asking them in the appropriate way.
That makes so much sense. The other type of question we talked about was the engagement question. And that's when you're just trying to get someone engaged. So that's about getting their opinions, seeing where they fit in with certain ideas that they might have, showing interest in them. So the kinds of questions you probably want to ask in the beginning when you're meeting with a new client are a lot of engagement questions. How can you engage them in the conversation?
And what's an example of that?
So an engagement question would be, so tell me the reason that you want to move to North Carolina. What's in North Carolina that's bringing you there? Now I get to talk about me. I'm moving to North Carolina, so my grandkids are there. There's a new job there. There's opportunities there. Housing is less expensive there. Whatever's the reason that I want to move there, my grandmother lives there. Could be anything, but you're now engaging me in the conversation. You're interested in me.
That's beautiful. And what we like to do is dig deep into motivation, because logic makes you think and emotions make you act. So when we're having these conversations, we like to go down the emotional route, because sometimes people throw objections over the phone, and yet to overcome those, we engage their emotions by sometimes people are looking to move close to family. So I'll start asking them more questions about family and how important is it to you, for you to be with them in the next 30 days? Is that something that's important to you?
Yes. I'm glad you specified emotion, because an engagement question is likely to engage emotion. And just think about it. A display question is going to be all about logic. 2 + 2 is 4. That's a logic question. Beautiful. Yeah. And so that's what we do a lot of times in sales. And when it comes to, sometimes they'll negotiate over $10,000 and it will potentially blow the deal. So I proposition the question with, is your being close to your family in the next 30 days worth $10,000 to you? Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, so that brings them, that helps them end up making that decision. And obviously, I can't force them to do anything. But sometimes when you ask certain questions that bring clarity to their mind, that's when they start making that decision to either
lose the 10,000 or, move on. But what they don't realize is that 10,000 may be 30, 40,000. And the reason that I say that is because if that property ends up going back on the market, at that point, someone else is going to wonder what's wrong with the property. Then we have to go through all the marketing as well to get people re-engaged to that property. And now it may have a bad stigma to the property. So
that makes sense. That makes sense.
So who's like some of the clients that you've worked with that, the Silicon Valley, there's high level individuals in the Silicon Valley, right? So who are some of the people that you've done some great work with?
Yeah, that's a great question because there are so many different people. One thing I love about coaching is I didn't have to pick a particular vertical and stick with that. I could help salespeople, but I also really could help anyone who has to speak in their job. And a lot of times non-native speakers are held back because they may be very knowledgeable. Most of my clients had PhDs, MBAs, they had years of experience, but they get stuck. So they get to a certain point in their career where maybe they're behind a computer and they don't want to be any longer. They want to get promoted to director, VP, something like that, or they want to start their own business, or they want to move into sales, or they've simply gotten to a point where they have more visibility. So it could be any company. So I've worked with large companies like Cisco. I was actually on site at Cisco for a period of time. I worked at Apple, HP, Google. These large companies, it's pretty easy to say because individuals contact me from those companies. But I also worked with just people who worked for themselves and paid for their own coaching. And those were some of my best clients because they were so self-motivated.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you worked with our buddy, John Sy.
I still work with John. Yeah, John's great because when I met him, he was already pretty successful. He'd already done like Mike Ferry and all that stuff, and he'd been, I think, a coach for him. So he was going on the stage, and he was working with much larger audiences. So it was kind of interesting to sync your verbal and your nonverbal communication. A lot of people don't work on the body energies. And what I mean by that is when you're breathing and you're moving and your voice and your hands move together, it's very different than if you're moving like a robot, or if you're not moving at all, or if you don't have good eye engagement. And it's more challenging when we're doing it over the internet than in person, or at least there are different challenges. And so we have to look at all those types of things, right? Those categories, those qualities. And that's something that John and I did.
Awesome. And, John is an incredible guy. He's doing huge things. He's our president for Canada of eXp Realty. And he's, like you said, speaking in front of large crowds. I would say 5,000 people at times, if not more. So it's pretty awesome to see the work that you've done with him. And he's definitely dedicated to, and he realizes how important speech is in communication. So let's talk about that for a minute. How does having an accent affect people in business that you've seen?
And that question is interesting because many people tell you it's okay to have an accent. And I would agree. It is okay to have an accent. There's nothing wrong with it. I have an accent. You have an accent. We all have our own accent. In fact, in linguistics, we call it an idiolect. So not an idiot, an idiolect, like a dialect. But each one of us has our own language, meaning maybe I lived in Singapore for 10 years. Maybe I lived in Canada for 10 years, and now I live in the US. So maybe my accent is different. Everyone's is different. Actually, I came from the Midwest. So mine is from Nebraska and Kansas. And I also lived in New York for a while. So we all bring that to the table. And the reason an accent matters is you don't want it to distract from your message. So if you have an accent where when you're speaking to someone, they ask you to repeat what you say, your clarity is suffering, you're not making connections, and often you feel that it has something to do with the way you're articulating. And when we talk about accent, it isn't just because it's a foreign language. Like let's say it's Russian or Bulgarian or French or Australians have an accent. It doesn't really matter which one. What matters is if you sound so different that it's distracting and people can't connect with you. That's what really matters. And if you feel like something, the language itself, So that could be like how you speak, what muscles you use. Your breath patterns make a huge difference. Are you exhaling? How long are the sounds? I mean, we can go into lots of detail, even voice quality. You know, some people talk way down here like this. And in our culture, that's kind of scary. But in some cultures, that's a way to be credible. So you can change all those things.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you know it immediately when you get a telemarketer who's overseas, right? When a telemarketer calls you, most people will hang up immediately. I'm always testing them to test their skills, so I stay on the phone a little bit longer, and then it ends up turning into a coaching session. Yet if someone moved here and is cold calling, I deal with agents all across the nation. So we have some in Canada that have heavy Chinese accents, and that's fine if they're connecting with other Chinese or anybody with a similar accent. And we always do what's called mirror and matching. So I know you know a thing or two about mirror and matching. Would you go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I've heard of that term is used from a sales perspective. What my philosophy is, and again, just to tell people what I understand mirror and matching to be, is that I watch your body language and your tone and your speech patterns. And then mirror and matching, the idea is that I want to do something similar to what you're doing. So if you're talking really slow, I wouldn't talk really, really fast to you, even if I'm in high gear mode. That's the theory. I think you can also just make it a little more simple in the sense that you need to be authentic. You need to be your authentic self. So I think one key ingredient is active listening. If you're not paying attention, you're not aware, and you're not listening, then you're not going to be able to mirror and match, because you don't even realize that you're doing something completely alienating, for example. So I think a lot of it is listen first and see where you can add value instead of just jumping in. I think a lot of people are so eager to get their message out there that they just jump in without first making sure that what they're saying is relevant. And if it's a speech, like if you don't have the option to ask questions, or you're on the phone with people, and so you're going to be saying things to them, and you won't have an option to find out where they're at, then you have to work questions in. And you have to have good questions where you can really connect with them. And you also have to have some way for them to respond to you. And it can be energetic responding. If it's public speaking, it's when you go, woo, say I'm a beast, like John does, and then people yell that they're a beast. That's interacting with you. So there are different ways to get people to engage and to be present, and not just to listen to you and you just talk and you're not connecting at all.
Yeah. The other day I was on a cold call, and for me, mirror and matching is really just to build rapport and comfort and trust when I first talk to somebody over the phone. So I had this guy, and he was an older gentleman, and his rate of speech was much slower. His tonality was much lower. So initially, when I called him, he said, hello. And I said, hello, is this Carlos? And he responded with someone else's name, like, hey, John, is that you? And so because I connected in voice tone, people want to be around their tribe, right? When you start hanging out with other guys consistently, you start saying some of the same terms, you speak the same language. Sometimes our tone of voice even starts to take some of that, like you mentioned, depending where you grow up, your accent becomes part of what you're around. So I always find mirror and matching over the phone allows you to connect with the person. Once you connect with the person, the most important part is being unattached to the outcome. Once you're unattached to any potential result, then you're simply, like you said, adding value. How can I add value to this person's life? And then there's a whole series of other things that we do to end up closing the prospect. I was on the phone with that guy for 45 minutes, and I think I did what's called closing 7 or 8 times because I knew he's going to sell the property. I also knew I was the best person for the job. So that's the key in my eyes as a salesperson, considered neuro-linguistic programming, just to build that trust over the phone. And we don't do it in manipulation sense. We simply do it to be able to connect, to add value, and help that individual in the best way possible. So
makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a key point, that the manipulation aspect, if it's done in a way where people feel it's fake and artificial, then that can lead to the other extreme. So you have to do it in a genuine way.
Yeah. And it's authentic in the sense that for me, I'm authentically trying to help them what's best for their scenario. So if you are looking to sell your property, you're facing foreclosure, you need help stopping that sale, I'm here for you. I know exactly what to do. I know how to speak with the banks in order to stop that sale. So I came from a place that is truly trying to help this individual, and more specifically, the deal that I got that's going to net $45,000 because of your empathy influence on that. He was facing foreclosure. So I was authentically trying to help him. He definitely wants to sell the property. Because I connected with him so well over the phone, after we got off the phone, I sent him a contract and he ended up signing it without me ever meeting him in person.
Wow, fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, I don't say that as for accolades. I only say that how important speech is in order to actually connect with somebody, and especially over the phone. Because if you can master sales skills over the phone, which is all speech, it's all speech. And so that's why if people are trying to improve in their business, and they are, even like you said, you worked with employees of big companies. If you are an individual that is in a business, in sales, I would highly suggest reaching out to Rebecca to help you in your speech, because that's going to help you serve more people, which is ultimately going to help serve your business as well. So I wanted to go into, you mentioned recently, I want to know, what can ChatGPT be used for to improve your speech?
Yeah, so AI is there, and a lot of people are afraid of it, and other people are embracing it. So there are things to be afraid of, but I'm embracing it, at least at this point in time. No robot has tried to take over my home yet, or take my job yet. But AI can really empower you. And I've had clients tell me, yes, but they didn't really know how to use it. So I bring up ChatGPT, and for those of you that aren't using it, you can get a free account. Free on Bard or free ChatGPT, and I've been using both, but I started with Chat. So I've been using that one more. And I just open it up. You can also embed it in your web browser. So if you're in Google and you're just Googling something, it'll pop up. And I have both Bard and ChatGPT, and it goes much deeper than a Google search. So how I use this for speech, let's say you're giving a speech tomorrow, and you're a little nervous about it. You're not sure, maybe your first language isn't English, and you're a little insecure about giving the speech. So I would encourage you to take some script from the speech. Now, a lot of people aren't using script. They're using talking points, which is great. That's actually better than a script. However, the reason to put the script into ChatGPT is it will mark where to stress, where to pause, where to get louder. Whatever you ask it to do, it will do. And you can say, I want to deliver my speech like a native American English speaker. What should I do? And it will give you suggestions and feedback. Now, it doesn't work with a recording. I'm sure in the future this will all be there, but it just gives you advice. The beautiful thing is the speech will come back. Whatever script you give it will come back, and it will put in all caps or bold, or it even uses little arrows up and down. And the arrows tell you where to go up and where to go down. So in the example you brought up, how can you sound more decisive? How can you sound more authoritative? If you gave it your real estate script, it would tell you where to go up and where to go down. And then
wow, that's crazy. I had no idea about that. So thank you for that nugget. I'm definitely going to be doing that. So you, just for the audience, if you take that script, upload it into Chat GPT, what is the prompt that you do prior to?
Oh, so you have to ask a very specific question. I'm glad you said that. It's just like a Google search. If you type in clothes, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. So you have to type in, let's say I want to buy a new suit. I've got to type in women's suit, maybe the color, maybe the fabric, maybe the price range, and then I'm going to get better stuff, or maybe certain brands that I like. So the same thing is true with Chat GPT. If you say, fix my speech, it doesn't know what to do. So you have to say, for example, I have a Chinese accent, and I will be delivering the following speech. Please mark words that might be challenging for me to pronounce as a Chinese speaker in American English. And it will highlight all the challenge words for you to work on. That's all you got to do.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, embracing new technology. It's always like that. You know, there's early adopters, and then there's laggards, you know, at the end, and then there's everybody in between. So even with my company, we're in the beginning stages, right? We passed the early adopters, and now we're right here in this position of the early majority that's coming to the company. So I'm super excited about that. Anyways, you made me think about that right there. And what's also funny is that before this interview, I prompted Chat GPT. I said, what type of question should I ask for a podcast to a speech coach? And it popped out 11 different talking points that I could potentially ask you. And so how fantastic is that? We live in a world that is so technologically high. You know, between having this interview, connecting with you via Clubhouse, and we have people on there internationally that are getting free coaching on Clubhouse every Thursday from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. And if anybody wants that link, feel free to DM me on Instagram. My Instagram is Sean Sells Homes with the Z at the end. What are some effective tools to use when working on accent improvement?
Well, let me show you a few that I use. I've come out with my own approach over the years because I found, especially sometimes I work, for example, with engineers who they don't necessarily want me to correct them. They want to get their own feedback. And it's not just engineers. Everybody wants to get feedback on their own. They want to be able to self-correct. So one of the things you can use is a tissue. Why? Because if you take a very thin layer, and John, for example, was asking about the S sound today. So we were saying words like smart. Notice the tissue's moving when I say that word, smart. If I say it like this, smart, 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 you don't really hear the S, and you don't see any movement either. So it's not just what you hear. As adults, we don't hear well. And when I say we don't hear well, I don't mean we're deaf, but children can hear nuance in speech. And after about age 9, we lose that ability. So if you have tools like the tissue for breath, and then I'll show you one of my favorite tools, which is this band. And the idea is that some words are longer than others. And if you learn that using the band, it happens even without the band. So it helps with length of sound, which is really key, especially for non-native speakers. Those are a couple tools. Another one that I use that not everybody has is a pinwheel, because it goes around when you do shh, like shout. So if I say shout, 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 it's not moving. Shout. It helps me get more breath. So some type of a breath tool for just the feedback that it's working, that you're using breath, and something for length of sound. Those are two of my favorite physical tools. The other thing that I would call a tool is a dictionary. And most people use a Webster or an American Heritage. And that's great if you're writing a research paper. But most people aren't trying to write a research paper. So the kind of dictionary you want to use is this type. This is the physical one. You can download this on your phone, and you can get apps. Cambridge and Oxford make similar dictionaries. Notice they're all British companies. So what's the deal with that? British companies make American dictionaries. They're just better at language learning tools for whatever reason. Just make sure it says American when you get it. It's the yellow. There's a blue series that's British. And the reason to use this type of a dictionary, it's a pronunciation dictionary. So when you look up a word here, it tells you what vowels to use. It uses phonetics. And when I work with clients, I teach them phonetics right away, because if you don't know how to pronounce a word based on how it sounds, not how it's spelled, you're going to have a lot of trouble in English. So those are my favorite tools.
Wow, that dictionary is huge. I had no idea that even existed. You know, that's the crazy thing about our education system. I didn't mean to go political. It's just so crazy that there's so many things they could be teaching our younger generations in order to just be overall better society. And one example is that dictionary. I went to private school. I went to a couple different private schools in high school and in middle school, and that was nowhere to be found. So I appreciate that myself for you sharing that right there. That's pretty cool. On Clubhouse last week, you were talking about this authoritative tone. The first thing, I feel like I'm a very good negotiator because I know where to find leverage in the real estate deal. So even if I don't deliver the speech very well, I'm still able to help my clients get a good deal for what it is that they're looking for. Yet we can always improve and make that message a lot stronger. So in particular, what were you telling me the other day about authoritative? One, and number two, what did you hear prior to you mentioning that?
Okay, so I'll talk specifically about your speech, and then I'll just talk in general terms. So, Sean, what I heard you doing was going up a lot to sound very conversational, which is what I'm doing now. So when you go up a lot, it makes people feel like you're energetic, like you're interested in what you're talking about. So you have a tendency to do some upswings, which are beautiful. There's no reason not to do them. However, when you're negotiating and someone is asking for something, and we were role playing where someone was asking for, I think, some extra days of escrow and you weren't willing to do it, if the answer is no, it's a mixed message if you go up. So if you go up and go, well, I can't do that, it means there's room for play. It's too tentative, and it means that I can argue with you and I'm likely to convince you because you're going up still. So there's room for me to negotiate with you. And if there is no room and you're saying no, you want to be very clear about it. I just can't do that. I'm sorry, that's not something I can do. And you go straight down wherever you start, your resonant pitch level. So you don't have to start high or you don't have to start low. You start at your normal level, and then you gradually move down. And when you gradually move down, this is how you say no in a way that's not offensive. Someone says, "Can I borrow your car?" I'm sorry, I can't let you borrow my car. But I really need a car. I'm sorry, that's not something I can do. I need a ride. I understand that you need a ride. However, I can't lend you my car. If instead I go, well, I can't lend you my car, that tells you that you can keep arguing with me that I may eventually lend you my car. So that's a simple example, but there's nothing wrong with going up. A lot of people think there is because there's another issue, and we tend to conflate issues. There's another issue where people go up all the time like that. We call it valley talk or up talk, and they go up all the time. That's not a good thing. However, there are times to go up. When you want to energize people, get them excited, you got to go up. But then you go down, and not only is that authoritative, but it also tells people it's their turn. So when you're chatting, if you go down and pause, it gives them time to respond.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's these little things in language, this communicating, I would say the people that communicate the best make the most money, who gain power and influence over people, not power over people, but with people, and are able to help them more because they're able to communicate in a way that connects with them. And that's what I love about you so much. And I didn't even realize the power of you until recently as I started jumping on Clubhouse, and I was like, whoa, this lady's amazing, so.
One thing I wanted to bring up is blind spots, because that's something you don't hear enough about. And the reason I bring that up is most of us think we either know what we need to work on, or we think we don't have to work on anything. And it's a beautiful blind spot. Once we know we want to change something, most people will take action. Like if you go to the doctor and they tell you need to lose 10 pounds, people will exercise more, maybe change their diet if they think that's something they should do. Yeah, you're right, my pants are tight. I agree with you. But what if there's something that's out of your awareness? What if you're doing something that's off-putting to people? They don't like it, but they don't tell you. Maybe you're their boss. Maybe they don't feel comfortable telling you. Maybe you shut them down when they go to tell you and give you feedback. So it's really important to get feedback from other people. It's also important to know what you want. So I wouldn't just take any kind of crazy feedback. You have to know that it's legitimate and it's someone who is giving you something constructive to work on, that they care about you and they want to help you succeed. But most people, when I ask them, what feedback do you get? They tell me they don't get any. They don't know what they should be working on. They don't ask, or they don't listen, or they're not aware. So the first step is you've got to be aware of what needs to change. And if you're not getting the result you want, whether it's sales or a job you're interviewing for, whatever it might be, if you're not achieving your goals, there's room for growth. Not to say anything's wrong with what you're doing, but if you're not getting exactly what you want, there is room for growth, and it's probably a blind spot.
It's funny you mention that because I have a coach who studied under a psychotherapist for about 10 years plus, and I think he's still part of the Gremlin Taming Institute. He studied under Rick Carson, who wrote the book Taming Your Gremlin. And what he did for me was huge because I thought I was dumb for the longest time. It was a limiting belief that I had. And in the Bible, it says, faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. And this guy moved a mountain in my mind that I thought I was dumb, right? Even though I seeked out all this sound advice, once that got lifted from me, it brought so much more clarity into my life. So when I hop on Clubhouse and I put myself up there, the purpose is to help the growth curve even further. So you've been in this industry for a very long time, right? You've been studying speech, language, all this stuff, and there's so much that knowledge that you have. Why would I not seek out someone who has that knowledge to shorten our growth curve? Because we think that sometimes, or I thought, like there isn't expansion of the mind. Yet as we continue to learn, and continue on that growth process, be vulnerable to take advice from someone, be vulnerable to fail, to learn. And that's the big thing about Clubhouse. And that's why I always challenge the sales agents that are either with our company or other companies that jump on the role play to step up on stage, because your growth curve gets condensed so much because several reasons. Number one, you're on there. Number two, John Sy, who sold, he sells 200 million in real estate every single year after year, on top of doing his other businesses as well. So you have 2, 3, 4 top level coaches who are coaching you in the sales process. Yet at the same time, when you're up there, all eyes on you, right? So it causes, my coach always says this, pain plus reflection equals progress. And that's what that is, because I remember the first couple times I showed up there, I hadn't been cold calling very much. I started cold calling a year and a half ago. And by me jumping on there from the beginning, my growth curve has gone like this. And if you look at my business, you'll see that growth curve, right? So making yourself vulnerable, like you said earlier, to take advice. Don't take it as there's something wrong with you. Make sure it's sound advice from someone who's already done it, and then implement that into your business. And you don't have to take it, yet reflect on it, that pain that you had while messing up in front of a live audience, plus reflection equals progress. So that's why I love that clubhouse. So cool. Well, anything else you might want to add?
Well, a logical thing to follow up on that is, how about if I do a tiny bit of coaching with you for everybody to watch? Just a small thing that we can work on today.
Let's
so
do it.
I want you, first of all, not to change anything. Just be you.
Okay.
But I want you to look in the webcam and look at your body. Don't change anything. From your chin all the way down to what you can see in the webcam. So just from here to here, look at your body and notice, look particularly at your shirt. Notice the lines in your shirt. Do you see those lines?
Yes.
Now I want you to just press into your feet and grow an inch taller and breathe. And you can take your arms out as you breathe. And I want you to fill all those areas with breath, so that when you get done, you don't see lines. And notice you still have a few lines, which is okay. So press into your feet and exhale. And as you do, press down with your hands and grow an inch taller. See how tall you can grow. And now put your hands here. Can you breathe into your hands? Put them even higher, even higher, even higher, even higher. Now, this is what I call a blind spot. Notice how when I say hi, you're going here. You could go all the way up here. Can you go up almost by your ears? Show me up to your ears. Yeah. And notice your ears are really up here, but you're here. So this is the physical part of speech. Now, can you take your hands and touch your body with them? Come all the way down and touch. Now go up a little bit higher. Go into your blind spot. So you're comfortable going here and here, but you don't go here. Right underneath your jaw and here, go right here by your throat. Touch your throat. Now, keep your neck long. Notice when you did that, your neck went back a little bit, which is a stress response. So can you elongate the back of your neck so your eyes are eye level, and let your muscles get really long? Can you get a really long neck like a giraffe? Yes. Now take your hand out here and breathe into your fingers. And exhale, press into your feet. Like you're going to stand up. Inhale. And each time you inhale, fill more of this space. Fill into your shoulder, your clavicle, your armpits. Fill up this space with air. And now exhale. Now next time we're going to start talking. I'm speaking. Try that.
I'm speaking.
Now, as you do that, the next time, can you roll your shoulders with you? Take your shoulders around and back. Inhale into your shoulders. Can you go up a little bit with your fingers here? Just tap. Tap, 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 tap. Now breathe into your fingers. And now take your arms up. I'm speaking.
I'm speaking.
I'm speaking with my whole body.
I'm speaking with my whole body.
Do you notice that your voice changed a little bit?
Yes.
What do you notice about your voice? What feels different?
Went deeper.
Yes. And your resonant pitch is deeper than what you're normally using, which is really common. So if you were to fill this whole area with breath all the time, you're going to be more powerful as a speaker.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. Wow. That's awesome. Man, you see, like, you spot things so quickly. That's what I was going to say earlier, is that I had got into a very, very heated argument with a family member right before the clubhouse. And, you know, I show up to the call and you pointed it out as we were role playing that you felt tension and stress in my voice. What did you notice when I was speaking during that role play?
Yeah, interesting. So when we get upset, I can always tell if someone has either had an argument, like you said, with somebody, or if they've been speaking another language just prior. You can tell there's remnants of that in the speech. So in your case, as I remember, it was a little bit like aggressive speech when you weren't being aggressive. So if you call somebody on the phone and you go, "Hi, how's it going?" That's what we expect. But instead yours was like, "Hi, how's it going?" So if you're talking like that when you're not angry, but there's a little bit of tension in the voice for no reason, that's usually related to something else, right? When you say, "Hey, how's it going?" you're never stressed. So using stress language when you're unstressed. And what we do to get that type of language is we change our breathing. We breathe from here. So you might notice if you take a hand and put it in the middle of your chest, this is where we breathe when we're a little bit upset. So if I'm talking to somebody and I talk from here, do you hear how I'm starting to sound agitated?
Yes. Yes.
If you start to spread the breath like we did earlier, this is public speaking breath. I still sound a little bit on. I'm not relaxed, but now my voice is changing. So depending on where you breathe, you could breathe from your upper stomach, your lower pelvic floor, your ribs, or you could breathe from your back. And I do exercises to help people leverage all the different places in your body that you can fill with breath, and your voice changes dramatically depending on where you're breathing from.
Wow. Wow. Nuggets, always nuggets. The other nugget that you dropped the other day, as I was thinking, what did I do? Do you remember?
Trying to think. What other nugget? No, I'm not sure.
You asked me, "Sean, did you notice that sound that came out of your mouth when I was thinking?" And you told me, anytime you're thinking, close your mouth. Once you close your mouth, you can articulate a lot more clear. And that sound, it was such a weird sound. It was like, it just came out of my mouth like that. And that's just weird.
Yes. Yeah, we all do that when we hem and haw. So the hem and haw is like, oh, right. Okay. That language disappears if you consciously close while you're thinking, and then you open your mouth while you're speaking, and when you pause, you close completely. And if you can train yourself to do that, you'll have less hemming and hawing.
If you guys are in sales and not working on tonality, on speech, on things like this, you're missing out on sales. I promise you, as you develop your communication more and are able to communicate effectively, ultimately, you're just going to end up getting more business. So if any of you are looking to reach out to Rebecca Linquist, her website is www.englishbythehour.com. You can reach out to her there. She also has a recent podcast on Spotify that she started, and you guys can find the link here. So Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to utilize a lot of those techniques. I'm going to go back and watch this video again. I'm going to do the breath work exercise and work on my speech, and I will continue working with you as well. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy, and I hope people have benefited, and I look forward to talking to any of you if you'd like to follow up with me. Thank you so much for having me.